You have been trying to hold the state, and that effort is the very thing that tells you it is not real. I say this gently. Many of you believe that persistence means tension. You watch your thoughts. You correct every feeling. You measure every day as if fulfillment must be guarded. And yet, inside, there is fatigue, not loud frustration, a quiet heaviness. You wonder why the vision feels distant even though you imagine it so often. Listen carefully. The state of the wish fulfilled is not maintained by force. It is carried by acceptance. When you strain to remain in it, you silently confess that it might leave you, and anything that can leave you was never assumed as yours. This is why so many feel stuck. You are not failing because you lack imagination. You are not blocked because you missed a technique. You are simply holding the desire as something fragile, and what is fragile is never felt as fact. I have watched countless students reach the imaginal scene, feel it vividly, and then spend their days trying to keep it alive. That is where the weariness begins. You ask yourself, why do I still feel like I must do something? Because you have not allowed the act to conclude. Creation is not endless activity. It is a single inner decision, followed by rest. But rest feels uncomfortable to the one who believes effort equals faith. So you return to imagining, not from joy, but from fear of losing it. Do you see the difference? You are not repeating because you love the state. You are repeating because you doubt its reality. And doubt does not come from lack of power. It comes from misunderstanding the final moment of the imaginal act. There is a moment, subtle, almost unnoticed, when the inner work is already finished. Most pass over it. In the next step, I will show you why the feeling of nothing left to do is not emptiness, but the sign that creation has already moved beyond you. You are taught to chase the feeling, to recreate emotion, to intensify belief, but fulfillment is quieter than you expect. When the assumption is true, it does not feel dramatic. It feels ordinary, natural, almost simple. This confuses many. They imagine a scene, they feel joy, and then later the excitement fades, and they think something has gone wrong. They try to revive the emotion, they return to the imaginal act not to enter the end, but to repair doubt. And that is where the struggle begins. The state of fulfillment is not maintained by intensity. It is maintained by identity. When you truly assume, you stop observing the desire as an object. You begin to think from it, without effort. Consider this carefully. If you must remind yourself constantly, you have not yet accepted it as fact. You are still persuading yourself. But persuasion is not assumption. Many of you are sincere, disciplined, deeply devoted, yet you feel tired because you believe you must continue feeding the vision. You say to yourself, I must stay focused. I must not drop the state. And every time you say this, you imply that fulfillment depends on your vigilance. It does not. Creation is finished the moment you inwardly agree that it is so. The outer world does not require your supervision. What you call persistence is often just resistance wearing spiritual clothing. I do not ask you to abandon imagination. I ask you to notice when imagination has already done its work. There comes a point when the scene feels complete, when you no longer add details, when you sense a quiet settling within. That stillness is not boredom, it is acceptance. But most fear that stillness because they mistake calmness for loss. They think, if I am no longer excited, have I stopped believing? No, you have simply moved closer to certainty. Yet there is a deeper misunderstanding that keeps people returning to effort. And until you see it, you will continue to believe that doing more is the answer. Let us speak honestly. You do not fear that the desire will fail. You fear that if you stop working on it, you will lose control. This fear hides behind spiritual language. You say you are persisting, but inwardly you are watching, waiting, checking, and that watching creates distance. When you observe something constantly, you place it outside yourself. You look for signs. You measure time. You ask whether it is closer today than yesterday. But fulfillment is not an event approaching you. It is an identity you accept now. When the state becomes natural, something unusual happens. The urgency fades. You no longer feel the need to talk about it inwardly. You stop asking when. You stop rehearsing. At first, and this feels strange, some even try to bring back the longing because they think desire equals power. Yet the absence of longing is not loss. It is completion. If a man receives news that changes his life, he does not spend the day convincing himself it is true. He moves differently, quietly, without announcement. That is how assumption feels. Not loud, not dramatic, simply done. Many practitioners reach this point and panic. They say, "I do not feel the same hunger anymore." And they interpret that as failure. But hunger disappears when you inwardly accept possession. Would you crave what you already are? No. And yet, here is the subtle mistake. Some try to replace effort with passivity. They withdraw, waiting for the world to prove their assumption. But waiting is just effort turned inward. True completion carries no anticipation. It is a calm knowing that does not demand evidence. And there is one final shift, a delicate movement of awareness that allows this calm to remain without struggle. The final movement is not an action. It is permission. You must allow the imaginal act to fall into silence. After you have felt the end, there comes a moment when you could continue imagining, but you choose not to. Not because you are tired, not because you doubt, but because you know it is finished. This is the part rarely spoken of. Students believe that stopping means neglect. They think they must maintain inner activity to keep the desire alive. Yet life does not grow through constant interference. Once the assumption becomes natural, you will notice a soft relief, almost like a breath released without effort. You are not trying to feel it. It simply arrives, a sense that nothing more is required. And then the mind asks, should I imagine again just to be safe? That question reveals the old habit of control. When you truly accept the state, repetition feels unnecessary. You may revisit imagination for joy, but never from fear. There is a difference between returning to a state and trying to hold it together. Most people remain restless because they believe the outer world must be watched. They scan circumstances. They interpret delays. They analyze every movement. But assumption does not operate through observation. It operates through identity. Once you accept the end, you do not chase confirmation. You live from quiet normalcy. This normalcy feels almost too simple, so simple that many abandon it and return to effort. They miss the sacredness of stillness. The world reshapes itself without announcement, and while it does, your only task is to remain inwardly unchanged. Yet, even here, one question lingers in the mind. If nothing is left to do, how does one live day by day without slipping back into striving? That is what we must understand now. Live as though the matter has already settled, not by pretending, but by allowing your inner dialogue to become quiet. You do not need to repeat the scene. You do not need to watch your thoughts with severity. Let life move. Walk, speak, rest, as one who has already accepted the outcome. There is no urgency, no need to check whether you are doing it correctly. When doubts appear, do not fight them. Return gently to the knowing, and then continue living. Assumption is not a performance, it is a resting place. Many believe that faith must feel strong every moment. But real faith feels simple, almost unnoticed. You may find that the desire no longer dominates your attention. Do not mistake this for indifference. It is fulfillment becoming natural. When night comes, allow yourself to drift into sleep without effort. Not rehearsing, not forcing emotion. Just resting in the quiet understanding that the work is complete. This is the state where creation unfolds most freely. The mind no longer interferes. The heart no longer strains. And life begins to reflect what you have already accepted within. If you leave with anything today, let it be this. You are not required to hold the world together with your imagination. You are only asked to accept and then allow. Nothing is left to chase. Nothing is left to prove. Assume, be still, and let the unseen rearrange itself around your quiet certainty.